she always wanted what I had, even when it didn't fit her. That's the first thought I had when I saw her standing there, holding his hand like she hadn't spent our whole childhood trying to walk in my shoes. But this story don't start there. It starts at a long folding table covered in aluminum pans and paper plates, the air thick with sweet potato pie and secrets. My name is Denise Holloway. I'm 48 years old, born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, and this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge. Back then, I was working as a trauma nurse at Baptist Medical Center South. Long nights, 12-hour shifts, sometimes 2 at a time. I didn't complain. I learned early that complaining never made the bleeding stop, and it sure didn't make the clock move faster. My life was scrub pants, white sneakers, and the smell of hand sanitizer that stuck to your clothes even after you washed them twice. Still, I had my own apartment, a little 2-bedroom with beige carpet that never quite matched the walls, but it was mine. I paid every bill on time. I had an old Honda that coughed in the winter, but carried me wherever I needed to go. And I had a man who made my heart skip like a scratched Luther Vandross record. His name was Trevor Banks. Tall, soft-spoken, with a voice like velvet over ice. The kind of man whose presence made women sit up straighter and men measure their worth. He ran a string of local businesses, a dealership where the salesman wore cufflinks even in the Alabama heat, a small marketing agency, and some property investments that kept his name floating around town in that young black excellence whisper people used when they admired you but didn't want to admit it. We met at a fundraising banquet for the community clinic. I'd spilled a little lemonade on my dress and was dabbing it with a napkin when he leaned close and said, "You got the kind of laugh you don't hear twice in a lifetime." And Lord help me, I believed him. Believed every gentle word he said, like he'd pulled them from the same place my mama kept her Bible verses. That fall, we'd been together almost a year. He brought my lunch to the hospital when he knew I'd skip meals, surprised me with flowers on payday because he said I deserved to celebrate too. Sent Uber Eats to my mama when she was sick, even though she'd only met him twice. He was the kind of man you prayed for out loud. The kind you didn't hide from God because you wanted him to know you were grateful. Maybe that's why I didn't see what was brewing right under my nose. My little sister Carla had always been slippery. We were only 2 years apart, but she acted like I'd been born with all the luck and she'd been handed the leftovers. Folks said I looked more like Mama, high cheekbones, quiet strength, the kind of face older women said stayed out of trouble. Carla got Daddy's temper, his quick mouth, and none of his wisdom. She could talk herself into a job, a bed, or a disaster depending on the day. She'd bounce from job to job like she was allergic to stability. 1 month in beauty school, next month personal training, next month boutique owner. Which really meant she'd ordered $200 worth of leggings from a wholesaler and tried to sell them out the trunk of her car. But whenever life fell apart, and it always did, she'd show up at my door, eyes big, voice soft. Talking about Niecy, I just need a place for 2 nights, I promise. And I let her in. Every time. I let her eat my leftovers, use my Netflix, borrow my clothes, sleep on my couch, and leave her perfume and attitude all over the place. I even helped her with her credit when she wanted to lease a car she couldn't afford. I sat with her, explaining interest rates and monthly payments like she was a teenager, not a grown woman with her own driver's license. But that's what sisters do, right? Or at least that's what I told myself. That Thanksgiving, I invited her to dinner. Mama had passed 2 years prior, and holidays hit different after that. The house felt too quiet without her humming gospel songs and telling everybody to stop peeking in my pots. So I wanted family around, even if the family came with problems. The table was full. Ham, dressing, macaroni with that burnt corner Carla liked, greens seasoned with turkey necks, and cornbread in a Sears casserole dish older than both of us. You couldn't walk past that table without smelling butter, brown sugar, and the weight of family history. Trevor showed up in a navy cashmere coat smelling like mahogany, clean linen, and black ambition. He always looked like he walked straight out of a commercial nobody in our neighborhood could afford to be in. Carla met him at the door like she was hosting the damn dinner. "Trevor, well, look at you, all GQ and stuff," she giggled, tucking her hair behind her ear, a move she used so often it should have been trademarked. He laughed politely, handed her a bottle of wine, and kissed me on the forehead. His hand lingered on my shoulder, that quiet, "I'm here" gesture he did without thinking, but I noticed the way her eyes followed him, not just looking, studying, hungry, like she saw something she thought should have been hers. I brushed it off. Carla always acted extra around my men. She flirted like breathing, and I'd seen her do it so many times it barely registered anymore. But that night, she didn't just flirt, she tested boundaries. We played spades after dinner, me and Trevor against Carla and whatever skinny boy she'd brought. He smelled like Newport shorts and cheap cologne, like he'd sprayed himself head to toe before walking in. Barely said 3 words unless Carla prompted him. Carla kept nudging Trevor when he talked, laughing too loud at his jokes, brushing invisible lint off his sleeve. I shot her a look. That big sister look Mama used to give us that meant, "You're doing too much." She met it with a smile so innocent it made my teeth clench. When the game was over, I packed up plates for everyone, foil, Ziploc bags, the works. That's how Mama raised us. Nobody left without food for later. Trevor kissed me goodbye, said he had to check on one of his rental properties over on South Decatur. He said he'd call me when he got home. I told him I'd see him tomorrow, but he didn't text that night, or the next morning. I got that gut feeling, the kind that sits behind your ribs and taps until you listen. I tried to ignore it, told myself he was busy, told myself I was overthinking, told myself not to be that woman, but something in me wouldn't sit still. I called, straight to voicemail. I texted, nothing. Around noon, I grabbed my keys and drove to his condo. His car was parked out front. That made my stomach turn. I walked to the door, knocked, waited. Nothing. Then I remembered the spare key he'd given me a few weeks back. "In case of emergency," he'd said, pressing it into my hand with that smile that made you forget to breathe, and I told myself this was an emergency. I opened the door slowly. The living room was clean, too clean, like someone had done a fast tidy and hoped it looked natural. A throw blanket folded too perfect, pillows arranged like a magazine photo. Then I heard it. Laughter, familiar, sharp, my sister's. I froze. Then, from the hallway, her giggle, followed by his voice, "Damn, girl, you wild." And then, the sound of that bedroom door creaking. That sound hit me harder than any confession could have. I didn't walk in, didn't storm down the hall, didn't throw anything. I closed the door as quiet as I opened it, walked to my car like I was floating, drove home with my hands tight on the wheel, knuckles pale. I turned off my phone, sat on the couch in the dark, still wearing my coat, held that old casserole dish in my lap like it had answers. The house was silent, but inside my chest it felt like a storm was forming. Not the wild, screaming kind, the quiet kind, the one that changes the land without warning. 3 days later, I slipped that spare key into a USPS envelope and mailed it back to him. No note, no message, just the key. Then I blocked both their numbers. I didn't cry, didn't curse, didn't break a single thing, because something inside me had cracked open. Not in pain, but in clarity. I realized they didn't just betray me, they freed me. You'd be surprised how much strength you can find in silence. Real silence. Not the kind where you're ignoring phone calls or giving someone the cold shoulder, but the kind where your whole soul goes still, where every voice that used to distract you disappears, where the world quiets enough for you to hear yourself again. I didn't tell nobody what happened. Not my girlfriends, not my co-workers at the hospital, not even my Auntie Bernice, and she's the one person who loves good tea more than she loves Jesus himself. If you give Bernice half a detail, she'll build a whole story with characters, costume changes, and season finales. So I gave her nothing. I packed what I needed: uniforms, scrubs, 3 pairs of reliable shoes, and my mama's Bible folded open to Psalm 27, handed in my 2-week notice, and left Montgomery without a single goodbye. I didn't even take the TV, didn't take the little wicker basket Mama left me, didn't take the picture of me and Trevor at the fair, the one where he kissed my cheek and I thought God himself had sent that man. I left everything, because everything had already left me. Folks thought I was running from heartbreak. The neighbors whispered. My co-workers speculated. Even the church ladies made prayer requests like I was dying. But truth is, I was finally running toward something. Toward quiet, toward clarity, toward the version of me I had forgotten existed, even if I didn't know her name yet. Atlanta hit me like a cold splash of water, louder, faster, lonelier. The highway lights looked harsher. The people walked quicker. The nights felt heavier, like they pressed down on your chest a little when you tried to sleep. I rented a small 1-bedroom off Glenwood, 3rd floor, thin walls, a liquor store across the street, a nail salon downstairs that doubled as a gossip hub. It smelled like acrylic powder, incense, and deep-fried wings all at the same time. Rent was high, but my pride was higher. I wasn't going back home just to explain myself. I got a job at Grady Memorial, night shift, trauma unit. If Montgomery taught me how to work, Grady taught me how to survive the work. The screaming never stopped. Sirens came in waves. Gurneys flew down hallways like they were on runways. And the vending machines, they were empty by 3 a.m. on day 1 of the pay period. I kept my head down, clocked in, clocked out, caught the bus home, sat near the window, watched the city blur past in streaks of yellow streetlights. No makeup, no heels, no men, no words wasted on people who couldn't help me heal. I wasn't angry. I was rebuilding, quietly. At first, the silence was heavy. I'd come home after 12 hours, kick off my shoes, and just sit on the edge of the bed, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours, not crying, not sad, just processing. Like my brain was running a full system update and couldn't do anything else until it finished. There's something about betrayal that strips you bare, not just of trust, but of the softer, warmer version of yourself that believed in people without conditions. The version that thought loyalty was automatic, especially from the people who had grown up eating the same cornbread and wearing the same hand-me-down Easter dresses. So I started writing again. I used to write poems in college, little things, mostly for myself. Stuff about rain on windows or mama's hands or the way southern summers felt like walking through someone's breath. I hadn't touched a notebook in years, but now I wrote goals. Small ones at first. Tiny steps so I wouldn't overwhelm myself. Sticky notes on the fridge. Save $500. Take certification course. Forgive yourself. Don't text him back. Little promises to myself, and I kept every single one. By year 2, I'd stacked enough money, slowly, painfully, dollar by dollar, to enroll in a nurse practitioner bridge program at Georgia State. Tuition almost scared me out of it, but fear had taken enough already. I wasn't giving it one more thing. I studied during slow hours at the hospital, made flashcards on my breaks, listened to lectures on the bus home, forehead pressed against the cold window. I ate peanut butter crackers, instant grits, and frozen vegetables to avoid spending money. Didn't buy a new pair of shoes for 3 whole years. Wore the same navy church dress to every interview. Stitched the hem myself when it ripped. Because I knew this season was temporary, even if it felt endless. And baby, when a woman is quiet long enough, she starts to hear herself, her real self, the one beneath the noise and heartbreak and expectations. Around this time, I joined a local community for Black women in health and wellness. It started with a flyer on the hospital bulletin board, Sisters in Scrubs, a safe space for Black women in healthcare. I didn't know I needed it until I walked through the door. One Sunday meeting turned into a mentorship dinner. One dinner turned into weekly check-ins. Before I knew it, I had a circle of women pouring into me like I was their daughter, their sister, their baby they wanted to see win. One of them, Miss Diane, was a retired RN turned real estate broker. Tall, silver-haired, always smelled like peppermint and success. She pulled me aside one day while we were stacking chairs and said, "Denise, you ever thought about buying instead of renting? You got vision. Vision needs roots." I laughed, hard. Told her my credit was still limping from co-signing Carla's disaster of a car lease. Told her I wasn't ready. Told her I didn't have money like that. Miss Diane just shook her head like she'd heard the same story 1,000 times. You work, you save, you learn the system. Baby, that's all a man ever did to build wealth. So why can't you? 6 months later, I bought my first property, a little 2-bedroom fixer-upper in East Point, beige siding, slanted porch, floors that squeaked like they were gossiping. But it was mine. Mine. Bought with my money, my fear, my faith. I painted the walls myself, scrubbed the floors until my knees popped like old popcorn, replaced light fixtures with YouTube tutorials and stubbornness. Then I rented it out to a single mom who reminded me of myself, tired but hopeful. The day I got that first rent check, I didn't cry because it was a lot. I cried because it proved I wasn't broken, not financially, not spiritually, not anymore. I graduated the NP program with honors, started taking clients on the side. House calls for elders, post-op visits, blood pressure checks for women who didn't trust the healthcare system. Word of mouth spread. Good news travels slow, but it travels steady. Soon, I was making more in a week than I used to make in a month. But I kept my old Toyota, kept my crock pot with the chipped handle, kept every receipt, every journal entry, every late night I'd spent whispering to God that I didn't want to feel empty forever. Meanwhile, Carla and Trevor were living their picture-perfect Facebook life. New house in Birmingham, baby shower with gold balloons and a throne chair like they were royalty, anniversary trips to Napa, matching Christmas pajamas, all of it curated like they were auditioning for Most Improved Couple of the Year. Trevor was wearing the same watch I helped him pick out for his first investor meeting. Carla tagging him in posts like, "My forever man." It didn't sting. Not anymore. Because by then, I had something they could never fake. Peace. Real peace. The kind built from work and prayer and long, quiet nights where you choose yourself even when nobody else does. In year 6, I opened my own boutique health practice, Holloway Wellness Group. Focus on preventive care for Black women over 40. First office was a converted dentist's suite above a laundromat. Second one, a proper medical plaza with a full staff and a waiting list 6 weeks long. I started speaking at conferences, mentoring younger nurses, investing in other women's businesses, becoming the woman I needed back when everything fell apart. I wasn't loud about it, but people noticed, even people I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Then one Sunday afternoon, I got a LinkedIn message from Carla. "Hey stranger, I think I just saw your name on a flyer for the Atlanta Women's Expo. You're doing big things. Maybe we can catch up sometime." See. I didn't respond, didn't block her either, because I already knew exactly how this would play out. She was fishing, and baby, I had more bait than she could ever handle. Some people don't come to say sorry. They come to see if you're still beneath them. That's what I told myself when I opened Carla's second message. This one sent through Facebook Messenger, like we hadn't been strangers for the past decade and a half. Funny how people who helped break you act shocked when you stop making yourself available for the breaking. The message popped up with confetti animations, like Facebook really thought this was a celebration. "Hey sis, I'm in town for the weekend. Saw your name again. Can't believe how far you've come. Let's grab brunch. Miss you." Miss me. Like I was a vacation she wanted to revisit. Like I was sunshine she forgot to pack. Like I hadn't spent years crawling out of a hole she helped dig with manicured hands and false innocence. I stared at the screen for a long second, long enough to inhale, exhale, then let the notification fade, long enough to feel that old sting rise in my chest, then dissolve like it never had roots anymore. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached for my planner. The leather-bound one I'd bought the first-year Holloway Wellness Group hit 6 figures. Heavy, dark brown, embossed with my initials like a quiet promise I had kept to myself. I flipped to the expo weekend, smoothing my thumb over the page. Atlanta Women's Wellness and Wealth Summit. Keynote panel. Downtown at the Peachtree Renaissance Hotel. A hotel I had quietly invested in 2 years prior through a Black women's investor group. She didn't know that part, but she would. Not through bragging, not through revenge, just through truth. The kind that stands on its own feet without shouting. The morning of the expo felt like the kind of day where God opens a window just to watch how you walk through it. The air was crisp. Spring in Atlanta always feels like the city is trying to decide between pollen and a breeze. I woke up before my alarm, sat at the edge of my bed, and let my feet touch the floor slowly, grounding myself, counting my breathing, feeling every inch of the calm I'd earned. I chose navy, a fitted suit, sharp shoulders, soft fabric, not because it matched the expo logo backdrop, though it did, but because it was the exact shade of that coat Trevor wore the last Thanksgiving we were all in the same room. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It just felt distant. Like a photo you don't recognize at first. Full circle without saying a word. I arrived early. Checked in through the staff entrance. Backstage smelled like coffee, perfume, warm lights, and nerves. People adjusting mics, volunteers scrambling with clipboards, makeup brushes whispering across cheeks. I sat in the corner with my ginger tea, eyes half closed, breathing in lavender oil to keep my mind settled. Then I heard it, her laugh, same pitch, same rhythm, still too loud for the size of the room. It traveled across the space like it had muscle memory, like it still knew how to find me. I peeked through the side curtain. There she was, standing by the check-in table, talking too fast, smiling too wide in a hot pink pantsuit made for women who needed attention the way others needed air. Her heels were high, too high, the kind that hurt by minute 10, but she'd force herself to wear anyway. Her makeup was good, flawless even. But her eyes darted around the room like she wasn't sure who might recognize her or who she needed to impress. She hadn't seen me yet, but I'd seen everything I needed. When it was my turn to speak, they cued the lights, straightened my mic, and motioned me forward. I walked onto that stage like it was my porch, calm, grounded. Knowing every step wasn't about Carla or Trevor or what they did, but about who I'd become in spite of it. I told my story, not all of it, just the parts meant to be shared in front of 1,000 women looking for hope, not heartbreak. How I left Alabama with 2 bags and a stethoscope. How I built a wellness practice for Black women tired of being overlooked in exam rooms. How healing wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, financial. How choosing yourself didn't have to be loud to be powerful. The room leaned in. Women nodded. Some cried quietly. By the time I finished, the applause rose like a wave. Warm, heavy, full. But it wasn't the standing ovation I noticed. It was her face, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, hands frozen mid-clap, like she'd just seen a ghost wearing designer shoes. Afterward, backstage buzzed with staff and speakers, photographers snapping pictures, women asking for business cards, event organizers handing me envelopes with honorarium checks and thank you notes. And there she was, waiting near the green room, just outside the velvet rope, meant for speakers and VIPs only. Her posture was tight, shoulders pulled back, purse clutched too close to her ribs. She looked like someone standing outside a door they used to walk through freely but no longer had the key for. I saw her before she saw me, and for a fraction of a second, just a breath, I almost turned around. Not out of fear, but because I didn't need this moment anymore. I'd already healed. But God has a way of circling the block with poetic timing, and this was one of those times. so I walked over. "Denise?" she said, blinking like she wasn't sure if it was really me. "Hey, Carla." I smiled. Soft, measured, not a hint of bitterness. She reached out for a hug before I could prepare. I let her. She smelled like Chanel, and something underneath that, something tight, anxious. Desperation wrapped in expensive perfume. "You look amazing," she said, stepping back to scan me up and down like I was a new model on a showroom floor. "I mean, wow, I had no idea you were doing all this." I nodded. "Yeah, it's been a journey." She shifted on her heels, trying to look comfortable in shoes clearly not made for standing, adjusted her purse strap, licked her lips like she was searching for the right words to open a door I'd closed years ago. "So listen," she started, voice dropping like we were sharing a secret. "Trevor's here too. He's in town for some business meetings, real estate stuff. I told him you'd be speaking. He was surprised, but happy for you." Happy for me. Imagine that. "He's around?" I asked, keeping my face unreadable. "Yeah, upstairs actually. His company's meeting with the new management group that bought out the majority of his downtown properties. Some kind of silent partner situation." I tilted my head. "Silent, huh?" She kept talking. "Things have been a little rough lately, with the economy and all. He had to liquidate some assets, restructure, but he's got a few deals he's hoping to land today." I nodded slowly, letting the weight of her words settle. Not like a burden, but like a soft blanket I'd already folded neatly and placed on a shelf. Then I said it. Low, calm, almost gentle. "I'm one of those silent partners." Her entire face glitched. "Wait, what?" I held her gaze, steady as church. "My firm is part of the investment group that acquired Trevor's distressed portfolio. The hotel you're standing in, I'm a stakeholder." She blinked. Once. Twice. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked around, at the branded banners with my name on them, the staff wearing badges with my company's logo, the VIP lanyard hanging around my neck, and that's when her face changed. Not with anger, not with jealousy, but with realization, the kind that hits slow, heavy, undeniable. She hadn't lost the upper hand. She'd never had it to begin with. She tried to laugh it off. "Girl, stop, you play too much." But I didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't soften the air. I just watched her swallow her pride like it tasted burnt. "I gotta run," I said, adjusting my blazer. "Back-to-back meetings this afternoon." She stepped aside automatically. It was instinct, her body remembering a hierarchy she'd never wanted to admit existed. "Oh, and Carla?" She turned, eyes wide like a child caught doing something she shouldn't. I handed her a sleek white envelope. "Your room for the night. All expenses covered. Room 1214. Names under Holloway." She hesitated, one heartbeat, then two, before taking it. I walked away before she could speak, because that wasn't a flex, that was a message, and the message was simple. You don't have to yell to be heard. I woke up the next morning just before the sun rose, not jolted awake, not pulled out of sleep by anxiety or old ghosts, just awake, like my spirit knew the day had something soft waiting for me. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, just earned. A quiet built brick by brick, choice by choice, prayer by prayer. A quiet I used to chase but never quite caught. Now it lived here, like a roommate who paid rent on time. I slipped on my robe, tied it loose, and padded across the hardwood floors barefoot. The boards were warm from yesterday's sunlight, smooth under my feet. The kind of small blessing you only notice when your life stops being chaos. I boiled water for coffee. Still used the old French press I bought during my early nurse practitioner days, the $24 one from Target with the loose handle and tiny crack near the base that never leaked but always worried me just enough to pour slow. Something about the ritual felt holy, pouring, waiting, pressing the filter down with steady hands. It made the morning feel less like routine, more like prayer. As the smell filled the kitchen, bold, nutty, grounding, I let my mind wander through the mornings that had come before this one. The early years in Montgomery, when I woke up to shift alarms that felt like sirens and heartbreak that felt like muscle memory. Cold mornings in Atlanta when my breath fogged up the inside of my old Toyota and I had to wear 2 layers under my scrubs just to keep from shaking at the bus stop. The mornings in that tiny Glenwood apartment where the heater clicked loud enough to keep me company. When I would sit cross-legged on the carpet writing goals on sticky notes while budgeting rice, beans, and hope for the week. And then, this morning, quiet, warm, paid for, mine. The kind of morning my younger self wouldn't recognize but would have dreamed about if she believed she deserved it. I stepped outside onto the porch with my coffee, letting the screen door creak closed behind me. The sun was barely stretching its arms over the rooftops, bleeding pink and gold across a row of magnolia trees that lined the street like a blessing. Kids' bikes lay tipped over on lawns. A jogger passed by with a slow, steady rhythm. A paperboy tossed folded newspapers with the kind of precision only practice or boredom can teach. The world was waking up slow, and for once I wasn't rushing ahead of it. 15 years. 15 years since that Thanksgiving dinner. 15 years since I saw Carla looking at Trevor like she'd already claimed what wasn't hers. 15 years since I slipped the spare key into that envelope and walked out of one life to build another. I thought, back then, that the day I got closure would feel loud, triumphant, like fireworks or applause, like a movie ending where the music swells and the credits roll. But closure is quieter than people think. It feels less like a victory dance and more like a quiet hallway in your chest finally unlocking. And that's what I felt now, full. Not the kind of full that makes you heavy, the kind that makes you whole. I took a sip of coffee, savoring the warmth, when I noticed a notification glowing on my phone, a text from an unsaved number. But I didn't need a contact name to know who it was. Thank you for the room. I'm heading out this morning. Not sure what to say beyond, I see you now. For real this time. I stared at it for a long moment. Not angry, not moved, just aware. Aware of who I had been, who she had been, who we would never be again. Then I tapped delete. No reply. Because some chapters don't need an epilogue. Some characters exit stage left and the curtain falls without applause. No second chances, no lingering conversations, just done. Later that afternoon, I drove to East Point to check on one of my properties, the little 2-bedroom fixer-upper that had once been the first real leap I ever took. I'd painted those walls myself, scrubbed those floors till my knees cracked like old plastic, walked around that place with a flashlight, glue gun, and Beyoncé-level determination. Now it was beautiful. Fresh siding, new shutters, rose bushes someone planted near the walkway. A young black couple had just moved in. She was pregnant, not far along, still holding the small of her back, like she was adjusting to the idea of becoming 2 people at once. He hovered protectively beside her, rubbing her back every few steps like he was still amazed she was real. They thanked me again for making the lease so affordable. Said they prayed over the house. Said they prayed for me, too. I told them, y'all are the prayer. They smiled at each other, the kind of smile that comes from knowing you're building something together. I walked back to my car and just sat there, hands still on the steering wheel, thinking about what it means to build something, not just with money, but with wounds, with memories, with the decision to not let what happened to you define what becomes of you. That night, I cooked dinner for myself, real dinner, not takeout, not leftovers, roasted chicken, cornbread from scratch, whisked by hand, mustard greens seasoned slow the way Mama made them, with smoked turkey tails and a pinch of sugar she always insisted wasn't sugar. I even pulled out the glass pitcher, the one I only use when I'm feeling tender toward myself. and made sweet tea the way Southerners do, with intention, with patience, with enough sugar to soften memories. I sat at my table with the TV off, letting gospel hum low in the background. Something about Sundays makes you want to hear a voice bigger than your own. I thought about calling someone, sharing the story, laughing at the irony of it all. But then I thought, maybe this one is just for me. Some victories don't need witnesses. Some blessings don't need to be spoken to be real. After dinner, I washed the dishes slow, letting the warm water run over my hands like a small baptism. I wiped the counters, dried the sink, folded the towel, and placed it neatly on the oven handle. One of those small rituals that makes a house feel tended to. Then I carried my sweet tea back to the porch and sat in the same chair from this morning. Same cup, same night air, same quiet, but not the same woman. Stronger, wiser, whole in places I didn't know were broken. I watched the sky darken, watched porch lights blink on one by one, like the neighborhood was settling in beneath a warm blanket. And I whispered it. Not loud, not shaky, not angry, just sure. I'm still here. Not surviving, not crawling, not pretending. Here, standing, rooted. Me. What happened to me didn't break me. It built me. And standing there, in the soft hum of a quiet Atlanta, night I finally understood. Some people steal what they think is your treasure, but sometimes God lets them take it, so you're free to go find the things that were meant for you all along. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.